Welcome to How to Stay Married So Far podcast, and welcome if you're watching us on YouTube.
For those of you listening on the podcast, I'm looking at myself and I'm beginning to realise all men at some point grow, their noses just continue to grow, don't they?
They say that,
beginning,
don't they?
Beginning to get an older man's nose.
Oh, Mark, that's your body dysmorphia.
I'm beginning to look at my face and I'm beginning to think that my nose isn't the nose I was born with.
Give you 2 minutes looking into a mirror and you will find something.
Horrendous. That's the only thing I hate about these podcasts is that I can see myself. It's so annoying.
Well, just look at me.
I do.
You don't need to look in the camera.
All right.
Okay, so if you're listening on podcast,
I think a few people listen to us on the
YouTube.
tube. Do you listen to us on the tube? If you're listening to us on the tube,
What are you saying?
we're still here.
Yeah. So, and if you're listening to us on podcast, go over to YouTube and tell us what you think about Mark's nose, whether it grows.
No, don't. Please don't.
Whether it
No, don't
has
say
increased
anything, please.
by
I
the
beg of
end.
you, say nothing about my nose.
by the end of the podcast. So please, if you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell, because we do offer so much different content on this channel, and if you've got that notification bell, you will be told. So last week we did a whole load of family vlogging on
Yeah.
our glamping trip, which was huge fun,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people really enjoyed it.
But also, a few people have complained that they haven't been notified when we've gone live. So what you have to do is unsubscribe and then resubscribe and re-click your notification bell, because sometimes it kind of, there's a bit of a glitch there that kicks in. Just a little incidental piece of trivia. The 3 things on a man that continue growing throughout their life are the nose,
Yeah,
the size of their ears, and I think we've discussed this before, their scrotum.
but not their penis.
Sadly not. Sadly not. Though at the moment I feel if I just grafted my nose to my crotch, it would be rather good.
Everyone's happy.
Yeah.
So I don't know what we're talking about today. It's Mark's turn to surprise me with something. Surprise, infuriate, or sadden me. We shall see.
Well, it's a very sensitive subject. I mean, the story of Gary Speed, the Welsh football player, manager who sadly killed himself in 2011. His parents, I think, and the family have published a book, and they're just sort of talking about reliving the horrors of the moment, specifically, when his wife found him, and the sadness, and trying to still to this day work out what it was that actually led to his suicide. And I think that the most sort of telling part of that was is the fact that they still have no answers. They know that he suffered from depression, but without answers, it's like they can't grieve. And it's that terrible thing. It just led me to think about, how our families dealt with my depression, and how not on a knife edge we always are, but how important it is to attend to these things and talk about these things so that you don't find yourself tipping towards a point where you make really rash and irreversible decisions. And I know that you've experienced, you've had experience of these things. I haven't ever experienced it. I've experienced many people die sadly too young, but I've never experienced anyone commit suicide. But suicidal thoughts and all that sort of stuff, and sitting with depression, I'd imagine, yes, there's the issue for the person who's feeling depressed. And you often hear it said that there's a sort of selfishness around the person who does kill themselves or is indulging in depression or whatever it is.
They're really cross about that.
Yeah, and I think my take on that was, and I used to have that thought, but I think you have to accept that, having experienced what I've experienced just through the sort of the dark periods that I go through and can go through and feel, there are points where rational thinking and rational behaviour go out of the window, and this is where it is a mental illness. And this is where, if we consider it an illness, it's like if you've got diabetes, you can't just by willpower stop the diabetes happening. And I think equally, if something's compelling you, and I've always believed, for example, that addiction, and extreme addiction, is a form of slow suicide. You're killing yourself slowly, because actually the thought of doing it quite suddenly is quite hard. And I don't think people are sort of braver for doing it or more selfish for doing it when they do commit suicide. I just think they maybe have had a more acute moment of breakdown where all the barriers to prevent it from happening have flooded in. And I think if I'm honest, when I think about the periods in my life where I felt like that, it frightens me. What does frighten me about all of it is that there are moments where you're not in control of what making the right decision is. And then, so that's the me bit, yeah, that's the depressive. But then, of course, this book being written today, Jesus Christ, what absolute fucking clusterfuck for the family. Contending with this possibility and contending with it, knowing or having had experience elsewhere of it happening.
Well, as you know, me and my family have been touched a number of times, very sadly, by suicide, and I never talk about any of that because I want to respect the families and the people. The other people that were very close to them. But something that maddens me more than anything else is when people say that somebody's been selfish, because that's saying like something that is a rational thought, and it's not rational. I mean, time and time again in this country we have a terrifying rate of suicide in young men, terrifying rate. And do people really think that those men that are taking their lives are doing that as a selfish act to hurt somebody else? They're in their darkest, deepest depths of fear, horror, loathing, and many of them believe that they are doing the right thing for the people that they love, because they don't want to put the person that they love or the people that they love in that position of having to, deal with them or whatever, So, oh my God, my heart goes out to this family. It really, really does, because, that need for answers will never end.
No.
That need for answers. But moving on from that and talking more directly about depression and living with depression in a marriage, because you described yourself as a depressive, and I never think of you like that, because depression is a part of who you are. And you as people see on our social media, whether it's Instagram or YouTube or whatever, that is what you are so much of the time. You're incredibly smart, you're incredibly funny, you have incredible energy and power and enthusiasm, and you're the cleverest person I know, you're the most able person I know. You have, you're just... You are just an extraordinary person, and part of what you are, or part of you, is that grossly unfair, is that you have mental health. I don't even want to say, I'm picking my way around it. What have you got? I don't even want to say an illness, because then I know what I mean when I say you have a mental illness, but it's what everybody else thinks when I say that word. It's thinking about how the papers would pick out that line and say, Nadia's husband has a mental illness, and then what everybody else thinks. And yet I know I must say it because it's so important to say it, because there's no shame in it and there should be no flaming taboo to it.
Yeah.
But this part of you, that how do we know how much of that is also what drives what's brilliant about you as well?
Yeah.
So the fact that you have depression sometimes completely overwhelms me, if I'm honest. And sometimes I can't distinguish what is okay and what's not okay. And that's when sometimes I think I want to go back to having therapy, because sometimes I feel like I've lost myself in rescuing you, or, if you come down and you're having a bad day, my day is then I'm focused on how I can help put you back on the right track, how I can help you feel positive, what words of motivation or how I can hug you or how I can do that. And I will lose every bit of issue that I have in myself that day. That goes out of the window. But where does that go? Where does my sadness or my anxiety or my stuff go? And it gets packed and packed and packed away. But we know, I mean, I am a diagnosed rescuer. That's what I am. There's nearly always, if somebody's an addict, their partner is a rescuer. Mm. But also because I've had tragedy around me, not that I do not believe for 1 second, let's make this really clear for the sake of you, our friends, our family, our children, I never think that you would commit suicide. We're not talking about that. But I do sometimes worry about when you cross addict to work and I think, okay, he's working really hard, he's working pretty much around the clock, so how much is he looking after his mental health? What kind of a crash can he have? It's been going so well. You've come off the antidepressants now for what, 7-8 months?
No, 4 months.
Oh, is it 4? Is it only 4 months? Oh, it feels longer than that. And so again, you're asking me how it is for me, and I'm talking about how it is for you. So I think that, and I'm sure if anybody's listening now who is in a marriage with somebody that's depression, I wonder if that chimes with you. I wonder if.
It's interesting though, but just with it, I mean, some of the thoughts that I'm taking from that, and I'm sort of cherry picking points that you made. You know, one of the things that Gary Speed's parents talk about is the fact that, you know, they remember laughing with him. And I remember there being a story not too long ago, about 6 months ago, I think there was the lead singer of a band, maybe our subscribers could remind me, I think it might have been a Welsh band, and the guy, or the drummer in a band or something, no, he wasn't, he was American, he killed himself, and anyway, and there was a film uploaded by his family of him laughing.
He was a footballer.
Was he?
Yeah, he was a big sportsman.
He was laughing with his family the night before. They were playing Snap or something. Yeah. And then, you know, and then what was so moving was the disbelief amongst all the people who'd been with him that night. And what really frightened me about that, and really upset me and distressed me, and I didn't talk about it at the time, was I could really relate to the extent to which, you know, we talk about fantasists and how they're not really, a fantasist isn't a liar, they believe the truth of what it is they're fantasizing. There's a bit of that goes on in mood enhancement in public. You know, I can like a fantasist would, I can believe myself into, and I can do.
What? Do you know that I do that all the time?
No. I think we all do it. I'm not saying. No. I'm not suggesting it's unique. I'm not suggesting it's unique at all. No. But what I'm saying is.
No, the reason I'm saying is I understand it. That's what I'm saying. I get it.
But I think on a more fundamental level that there's only a limited number of what they call masking techniques that we can use to hide things, and because we're a human with a head and a nose, unfortunately the size of mine today,
it's growing every minute.
You know, one can only operate within the parameters of this. And it just struck me, I thought, yes, that I relate to that. Again, not saying I wanted to kill myself, but you know, very much looking at it thinking the face and the front bears no relationship whatsoever. And it's just like, as with you, it doesn't bear a relationship to the truth of you. And as it does with all of us, we have a responsibility, if we're sociable, to be things for people. I understand that. But when the parents said that, you know, he would laugh a lot and all of that, and I was led to think, it's hard. It's hard. I mean, for example, in our household, you've probably got a good sense of this. Go and watch all of our vlogs if you want a sense of it. I look at them and I cringe because I just see hyperactive me, like an enormous child. And then I think of the quietude and the quiet moments that surround me at other times. I'm going to say something really, I don't mean this to sound bad, but I am constantly trying 500% to stay as close to that for everyone in the family as I can. Because if I stop, I can't see how I could start again. And when you say those things of when you come down, I don't know how to. I do feel that sometimes I have a fear and a burden of. There's a waiting game going on for when it dissipates and when's the actual real depressed mark going to kick in.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because we're talking about how it impacts on the family around when somebody suffers from depression, and I would say I'm almost doing the same thing, because I feel you drop. If ever I'm sad or I'm down or I'm worried about something, I feel you get very almost irritated by that. It's like our dynamic is so set in that you're the one that gets depressed, or you're the one that has to override how you're feeling and be a certain something, and that's very exhausting for you, because, you know, thinking totally this, but if we're talking about how it is for the family, and I'm sure a lot of couples are going to resonate, because this is going to resonate with them and say, the depressed one doesn't realise how much the other one has to do that.
Has to do the same thing.
Because I'm balancing it as well. I'm going, okay, so, I do feel a bit down, but Mark actually has depression. I feel a bit down, so therefore my feeling downness doesn't
never
really...
compare.
It's like I said something to you the other day, and I said, I'm really, I think sometimes you don't see the signs that I'm asking for your support. And I think, again, that's because I do push away support a lot. And we talked about this in a previous podcast, actually, and you said, I don't think I actually look into why you feel stressed. I just say, you're stressed. You said it in a podcast a few weeks ago, and it was really nice. It was really nice to hear you have my feelings validated when you said that. But for instance, last week I said, oh God, I'm really nervous about next week, because this week I've got lots of things that I'm doing that are really like out of my comfort zone, and I feel really nervous. And you said, you say that every week. You've got a bad week every week. And I just sort of walked out of the room. You didn't mean it nastily, but I went up and if we're talking really honestly about what it's like living with somebody with depression, anxiety, I thought, there's just no space for me to say, I feel fucking terrified, I'm anxious, I'm really depressed, I'm barely coping, I'm pretending everything's fine, but actually I'm really in a thing. So then I have to hide it, and then everybody says to me, well, you're a bit weird, I can feel there's something a bit weird about you. But I don't feel there's the space for me to say.
Okay, well, I hear that.
But it's interesting that you said that a couple of weeks ago, didn't you? You said,
I remember.
You said to me, I actually hear that, Nadia, and you said, I do just say to you, you're stressed, and you went, like you had an epiphany, you said, but I never actually questioned as to why you are. And I really liked that you'd said that, and it made me feel really good. And this morning, or yesterday,
I'm trying to think what I can say now that would make you feel really good.
It was like yesterday when you said that to me, well, you always have a bad week. And I actually thought, and what I should have done with couples counselling, what I should have done was said to you...
Fuck off.
No. I should have said to you, do you know what, Mark? Do you remember last week when you said, this is one of those occasions where I'd like you, instead of just going, well, you always have a bad week, I'd like you to go, why? What are you feeling? Because that's what I would have done with you. And then I would have said to you, right, let's break it down. So you've got this. Well, look at it. This is really good. You're doing this, blah, 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 blah. I like
unpacking stuff. Well, we did a bit of that this morning. I was unpacking the situation. I like it. You're right. I should have done, and that was probably.
No, it's not should, because I hate that word.
No. But I remember saying it, and I remember thinking probably at the time.
Not following through with it.
What?
I remember saying.
No. I remember saying to you, you always. And I thought when I said. Every week you are a dramatic person, but then I thought so. It's the same for me.
That's what's going up the stairs. I thought, my God,
pot
he says
calling
that to
kettle
me
black. No,
10 times.
What can I just say?
Well,
almost no sooner had it come out than I thought that was unnecessary. I genuinely did. I genuinely thought that. But because of the movement of life, and you were upstairs for a bit, and things went on, I didn't get a chance to back reference it. But I hear you, and it's still something that one needs to attend to. I can hear how. I can only assume that yes, people. For example...
I think, and I'm going to say something really contentious here.
God.
Depression is a real thing, right? And it is a terrifying thing. And oh my God, my heart breaks that you have it. And for anyone else I care about that's had it or has it. But it is a hungry beast. It is a hungry beast for those around. And yesterday when you said that to me, when you went, every week's bad, and the kids were there, and I was thinking... You know what? They see me reach out to you all the time. For want of a better... Okay, rescue, that's the really negative term, but also really support you. I don't want to... Everything I do isn't just I'm a rescuer. It's because I support you and I understand what you have and I adore you and I see that all that's brilliant about you. And I would have liked for the girls to see you do that for me. And in fact, I just felt a bit silly that I'd said to you I was worried about my week. And that was the hungry beast of depression, because it was like, actually... well, actually, I'm having a really bad day, and actually, I've got anxiety, and actually, I don't know why I'm a bit overwhelmed. I've had this homeopathic remedy, and I'm feeling... So there's no space. If you're having a bad time, there's no space for anyone else to feel anything. Okay. And I understand that's because it's black dog and it's black hole, and I get it, and I don't resent you for it, but sometimes I'm overwhelmed by it. Not often, but sometimes I go... God, where am I? I feel like I'm drowning a bit in it. I was like, who am I? Where am I? What am I? And what is my part? If Mark suddenly disappeared off the face of the earth, how do I manage this stuff?
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because as you're saying that, and I hear you, and I'll think about that, and it's trite to sit here and say,
no, you don't have to say anything.
But it's pretty huge what you've just said.
So when you say that's huge,
well, it's a massive.
Break that down.
Well, it's clearly a massive oversight on my behalf. It's a classic. Obviously, my general behaviour is hoovering up energy and attention away.
This is classic.
No. Hang on. Let me finish. This is classic you.
Go on, then.
You don't let me finish.
Go on.
And the idea being that I get it. Depression is a massive, the addict, the hum of the addict. It's a hoovering thing. But the way you've just described it sounds like you're all giving and I'm all taking again. And we've had this conversation, and I don't see our relationship like that. I don't think we would sustain ourselves if we were like that.
I would say that's grossly unfair. And what I would say is you would have to go back and you would have to watch this. I started off by saying how extraordinary
No,
you are.
I'm not. Don't want to hear that again. I'm not talking about that.
I'm
talking about. I'm not being defensive about this.
No, let me finish because I just listened to you. Let me finish. You've just done what loads of people do that are married, what I do when we're having a discussion, what you do, and what every other married person or person in a relationship is going to have heard this so perfectly. I voiced what I said, what I was feeling, and you immediately said, well, obviously this is a massive thing and I'm hoovering everything. I didn't say that. I said it's one part of a whole load of other things that's amazing of you. Let me be clear. I don't think it's a massive thing that is all consuming all the time, every day. I do not think that I'm the one that's all giving and you're all taking. I said, when this rises up, I feel like that, but it's not all the time.
I would say that they're like the yin and the yang of every puzzle, and you often hear it said that there are two sides to an argument and all this kind of shit. And you go to couples counselling, and the great thing about couples counselling is that the great thing about couples counselling is, if it's a good couples counsellor, is they give complete equality to both opinions, regardless of where they're coming from, regardless of what each partner in the exchange feels the edge is or the agenda is or whatever. They give validity to both. And all I would say in answer to that is, I hear you, and I will think about what you've just said, because the two examples of the situation that we're in, I hope that you always know I'm the kind of guy to, if something's said to me and if something's drawn to my attention, I'll always look at it. I will always look at it. I've been trained in recovery and sobriety to, maybe not right at the very moment of it being brought to your attention, but I will always go away and examine and interrogate how I could have done that better. What I would say in answer to that, though, is that I do sometimes feel equally that it's a rhythm that we've both got into and that we can both get into, where there's as much as I do push out and almost, if you like, emotionally land grab for a bit more because of this hungry beast of kind of insecurity, of depression, all that. Drives me fucking nuts. I wish I wasn't fucking like that.
You want to be free of it.
I'm constantly wanting to
It's all about intention.
I'm constantly wanting to pull myself back from it.
Malicious.
But equally, I think that rhythm of expectation also sits on your side, where you're assuming things, or it's easy to assume, and that's no criticism in that. I can understand why you assume I'm in this mood, or you assume that when sometimes and very often I'm not. When I feel I'm achieving remarkable things quietly, silently in my heart, in my head, maybe not expressed on my face, they can be the occasions when there's a total mismatch between how I'm feeling and how you and how the girls. And those are the moments when I feel most crestfallen, because I feel like I want to privately get on with this shit as much as I can because I don't actually want to be parking it in the centre of the room all the time.
And I think even without depression, that's the normal ebb and flow. It's a very, very difficult thing to live with another adult. To live with another human being takes a lot of work. Energies don't meet in the same way. Like just earlier when I came in and I was actually really buzzing because I'd got over something that I was really worrying about, so I had a high energy. I went, "You're very manic." Well, yeah, that's probably how it felt. But actually, I was quite enjoying that energy, and then that energy has to be stopped. Your intention isn't bad. My intention isn't bad. It's just the complication of people living together.
But there is
that's why so many people just give up and walk out of a house and slam the door and get separated and get divorced.
Preferential treatment, like most people assume sunny weather is better than bad weather. Most people assume that being in a great happy mood is always better than not being smiley and everything. I do feel that
nothing can be one thing. I mean, anyone
nothing could be one thing. But
I
there is. I mean, I'm not saying this is the case with you, but I do feel at times there is a slight tyranny of happiness where you're kind of like, look, I am what I am. You are what you are. We both sometimes meet at the same place. I can be as silly as the next person. Sometimes when I'm so silly, you all want me to stop. So there are times I'm constantly finding the edge of where it's right to be as whatever. I know for example that life goes much more smoothly in this house if I'm sillier. Rather than sometimes I do just sit in the car and cry. I will take, you don't know how often I take that away. I don't share it, I don't talk about it.
I envy that. I envy that you can sit in a car
and
cry.
cry.
I think that's good. I think that's brilliant. I think more people should do that. I think people wouldn't go as fucking nuts if they did actually cry. And I think that everything that we're saying is just what a real relationship is. It's about finding those ways. Where do I step to one side? Where do I step forward? It's a dance.
But going back to the family thing and how it impacts on families, you get, for example, the girls love me when I'm in a silly mood.
I think it's the extremes though, Don. If I can just pause you here, we are talking about depression and living with the. I know you're taking everything I'm saying personally, but I'm trying to be really honest about talking about the specifics of depression. I'm not talking about you as a whole person or our whole marriage. That the title of the podcast is that. So when I'm saying these things, you've got to not take it personally and think I'm talking about you as every minute of our relationship, because I'm not. I think what the girls talk about when they talk about, and it's not true that the house is only good when you're really high. When you're really high sometimes can be really nerve-wracking because I don't know how low you're going to crash. I quite like it when you're just quite, I like all the things that you are. I love all the things that you are. I think what we're talking about is when you go very high and then you go very low, which I think, again, anyone with depression understands. And we try and find a way around it because we know it's not your fault. But that's what's confusing for children. I think anybody here that's a child, because we know a lot of younger people listen to this. The child of somebody that suffers with depression, your mum suffered with depression. You knew what that felt like as a child. But 90% of the time, your girls are totally happy and they have the best father in the whole world. So we're talking about a teeny bit, because we're talking about depression. If we were sitting here talking about you as a father, the depression bit would be a very tiny bit of this conversation. So you've got to.
I get that. I mean, I suppose the other thing that the Gary Speed story throws up, maybe this is another podcast, is why there is a prevalence of men why men of a particular age struggle so profoundly. And I have so many thoughts on that.
The figures are not improving, so the people.
I think statistics for the last year did go down.
There's just so much expected of men, and when you think of what Gary's parents are saying, that he wasn't. They didn't know. So men are expected. If I feel down, I can ring a girlfriend. I can even go into work tomorrow, and there are at least 4 or 5 people that I 100% trust that I could have a conversation with and take off my mask as I go down the corridor. Hello, yeah, how you doing? Yeah, great, yeah, kids are great. And I can go, do you know what? I woke up this morning and I feel like absolute poop. And they go, oh God, really? Why? And that, I don't think men yet have that in the same way that women do.
I think the issue for men is men don't have it even when they think they have it. Because it happens often around drink, it often happens around external things.
See, I don't have to have a drink to tell my friend. In fact, if I'm drinking, I'm going to be laughing and joking and happy. I never talk to my friends when I'm drinking about big problems. I talk about it. I'm thinking of Lisa, lovely Lisa. The other day, she texted me out of the blue, and I was going into work, and I'd masked all the way through the... And she just called me at just the right time. She went, all right. I said, no, I'm not. And I've got a meeting in 10 minutes. She goes, I'm there. She came down into the dressing room, Lisa, I love you. And with her great big boobs, I let myself just lie on her boobs. She just cuddled me, and I just spurted everything out that I was feeling, just like a child. She stroked my head, and I felt like $1,000,000.
Yeah.
I felt like I could get on with the day and everything.
But Lisa's very good at that. I'd like that with Lisa.
But how many men have got that?
Oh, well, I've never rested my head on a male chest.
You rest them on mine.
Spurted out my
Everybody
tears.
needs a bosom for a pillow. Everybody needs a bosom.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's doubly difficult. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah. No. I mean, if I think about I've never had. Men just wouldn't be like that. I've never.
I mean, maybe we're wrong. Maybe it's our generation. I'd love to hear some comments below. If there's any men that say, do you know what? Actually, I'm really sick of people who are saying this about men. I have a friendship, or I have a group of friends where I can be, because maybe in the
I notice a
generation
lot more
below,
sensitivity in the boys of Maddie's peer group.
They
Actually,
talk about their
and
feelings.
I've kind of employed a couple of them on jobs, and so they'll know who I'm talking about. But there's a sort of, they're boyish, they're boys. Don't get me wrong, but there's also, it's almost like their generation has had to get in touch with slightly more emotional stuff. I mean, my generation is the 70s generation. I mean, I was quite in touch with, but I mean, I don't know.
But you know what it is, Mark? Like a bloke, whether it's a young man or bloke, they can say, oh God, yeah, my friend. I'm thinking of one particular person, so I'm talking around it because I don't want them to be identified. But somebody I know in my family, a boy, said to me, told me something massive about a friend of his. And I was like, oh my God. And I immediately had 4 or 5 questions. So, and when did it happen? Oh no, I didn't want to ask that. I didn't ask that. Because that'd be really personal. I thought, if that had been a girl, she would have had the next 10 questions answered.
I think this is a whole other podcast.
Yeah, let's do it. The way men talk to each other.
The way men talk to each other, and why men are really I think men are very lonely. I think all men are very lonely. The interesting thing for me is you can be in a football crowd. You can be. Whenever I look at a football crowd, I used to go with my sponsor up to Crystal Palace. There's a lot of lonely men in a very contained place, screaming their heads out, wanting to belong, and I think that's why sport is a big unifying factor for men, and I miss that. I get a bit tearful about it. I do think, and I do feel very lonely. So we should talk about that on another one. No.
Here, let me give you a hug.
Oh God!
But listen, why don't we do?
Can I rest my head on you? Like
Yes.
Why
don't we do men and loneliness on our mental health vlog, wellness bit on YouTube? Not vlog, but on YouTube.
Maybe we should do a mental
Leave
health
your comments
podcast.
below. No, not about men and loneliness. I mean, not a lot of men listen to this podcast. Most of you are women out there, so
for those,
maybe if you've got a man that you think is just struggling a bit, because the way Mark talks so articulately and so eloquently about all of this, you do.
But anyway, for those of you listening, my nose has now reached the floor.
Yeah,
it's enormous.
It's almost
pendulous.
Could it almost fit now with your scrotum?
Yeah, probably. I could graft it on. Look at the way it wobbles.
I love you.
I've got to get an old man's nose.
I love you, and you're a wonderful husband, and you're a wonderful dad.
Well, so are you.
It's just sometimes you're really bloody annoying.
So are you.